Imagine standing in a Walmart checkout line, holding pregnancy tests, exhausted from years of fertility struggles, and some nosy cashier decides to make jokes about your most private pain. What would you do? Well, what this guy did next left an entire checkout line speechless and gave him the most satisfying revenge of his life. If you've ever dealt with someone who just couldn't mind their own business and got exactly what they deserved, you're gonna love this. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about people getting their comeuppance, and get ready for one of the most brutal verbal takedowns you'll ever hear. Let me paint you a picture of where this all started. This isn't just about some random guy having a bad day at Walmart. This is about a man who'd been through hell and back, trying to start a family with the woman he loved. When this story happened, he was 47 years old, his wife was 42, and they'd been fighting an uphill battle against time, biology, and heartbreak for years. You know that phrase, biological clock ticking? Well, for his wife, it wasn't just ticking anymore. It was chiming like Big Ben at high noon, and every single chime was a reminder that their window was getting smaller and smaller. She had everything you could think of to track her fertility. The thermometer that she'd check religiously every morning. The tracking app that sent notifications like it was her full-time job. All those little gadgets and tools that are supposed to help you figure out when you're ovulating. And if you've ever been through fertility issues, you know how this stuff can take over your entire life. The pressure was crushing them both. His wife was frustrated, scared, and desperate. And that kind of emotional weight doesn't just stay with one person. It spreads. It gets into every conversation, every quiet moment, every time you look at each other and wonder if today's the day, if this month's the month, if maybe you're just not meant to be parents after all. They'd been trying for years with absolutely no luck. His wife had fibroids, which for those who don't know, are these growths in the uterus that can make getting pregnant incredibly difficult. She had to have surgery to remove them, which meant months of healing, months of waiting, months of putting their dreams on hold while her body recovered. And then, just when they thought maybe things were looking up, she got pregnant. For a brief, shining moment, everything seemed perfect. Then she miscarried. And if you've never experienced that kind of loss, let me tell you, it's not just losing a pregnancy. It's losing hope. It's losing the future you'd already started imagining. It's losing the nursery you'd mentally decorated, the names you'd quietly discussed, the person you thought you were going to become. It felt like a gut punch to both of them, and honestly, it was starting to feel like maybe they were never going to have the family they dreamed of. So when you understand that background, when you know the years of struggle, the medical procedures, the emotional roller coaster, the age pressure, the constant disappointment, maybe you can understand why getting a text at work saying, "Come home now," wasn't exciting anymore. It was exhausting. He's sitting at his desk, probably trying to focus on work, trying to have one part of his life that isn't completely consumed by ovulation schedules and fertility windows. And then his phone buzzes. Come home now. If you've been through fertility struggles, you know exactly what that means. It's time to go. The app says she's ovulating. The thermometer confirmed it. Everything has to stop because this might be the month, this might be the chance, and you can't waste it. Then comes the follow-up text, "Can you also pick up pregnancy? Tests on your way?" And right there, you can feel his energy just deflate. He's busy, he's tired, he's frustrated about having to perform on demand like some kind of machine. He's at the end of his rope, and now he has to leave work, go to the store, walk down the feminine hygiene aisle, and buy pregnancy tests. Again, picture this guy driving to Walmart, probably stuck in traffic, knowing his wife is at home waiting, knowing he's got to hurry because timing is everything in this fertility game. He's thinking about all the pregnancy tests they've bought over the years, all the times they've hoped, all the times they've been disappointed. He's thinking about how this whole process has turned what should be the most natural, beautiful thing in the world into this clinical, scheduled, pressure-filled nightmare. He gets to Walmart, and of course, the place is packed. Because when you're already having a rough day, when you're already feeling like the universe is working against you, that's when every single person in your city decides they need to go shopping at the exact same time. He finds the pregnancy tests, grabs them, and starts looking for the shortest checkout line because he knows he's on the clock. His wife is home waiting, and in the fertility world, timing isn't just important. It's everything. He spots a line with this older cashier, and even though he can tell she's one of those chatty ones who likes to comment on everyone's purchases, he gets in line anyway because it's the shortest and he's running out of time. You know the type of cashier I'm talking about. The one who feels like they need to make conversation about your toilet paper brand or ask if you found everything okay when you're clearly just trying to get in and out as quickly as possible. So he's standing there, pregnancy tests in hand, watching this cashier chat with every single customer about their purchases. And with each person ahead of him, he's getting more and more frustrated. He's thinking about his wife at home, probably. Checking her phone, wondering where he is. He's thinking about how this whole situation has become so mechanical, so unromantic, so far from what they'd imagined when they first started trying to have a baby. Finally, it's his turn. He puts the pregnancy tests on the counter, probably hoping she'll just scan them and let him go. But no, that's not how this is going to play out. She scans the box, looks at him with this knowing smile, and says with a little laugh, "Well, these aren't for you." Now, in her mind, she probably thinks she's being cute, maybe even friendly. But this guy has been dealing with fertility issues for years. He's been through the emotional ringer. He's tired, he's frustrated, and he's definitely not in the mood for small talk about his most private struggles. So he responds with what he thinks is pretty clearly an annoyed tone, clearly. Any normal person would pick up on that hint. Any socially aware human being would realize, oh, this person doesn't want to chat about this. Maybe I should just finish the transaction and move on. But not this cashier. She either doesn't get the hint or she chooses to ignore it. Instead, she doubles down with, "Well, it's exciting and you must be so happy about it." And that's when something inside him snaps. Think about what she's saying. She's telling this man who's been struggling with fertility for years, who's been through miscarriages and medical procedures and endless disappointment, that he must be so happy about buying pregnancy tests. She's assuming joy where there's been nothing but pain. She's making light of something that's been tearing his family apart. He looks at her, probably with that look you get when you've just reached your absolute limit. You know the one. When you've been pushed and pushed and pushed, and someone just gave you that final shove that sends you over the edge. And he says, deadpan, looking her straight in the eye, "Actually, these are for my 16-year-old daughter so she can find out if her 19-year-old unemployed boyfriend knocked her up. But yeah, we're all really over the fucking moon." The silence that follows is deafening. The woman behind him gasps and says, "Oh my God." The cashier's face turns a color of purple he's never seen before, and her eyes bug out like she's just witnessed something absolutely shocking. The entire checkout area goes quiet. People are staring. The casual, chatty atmosphere has been completely obliterated by this brutal, sarcastic response. Now, here's the thing. This guy doesn't actually have a 16-year-old daughter. His daughter is 5 years old in the present day, which means she wasn't even born yet when this happened. But in that moment of pure frustration and anger, he created the most devastating fictional scenario he could think of. He took her assumption of happiness and flipped it completely on its head, giving her the most uncomfortable, inappropriate family situation imaginable. The beauty of his response is in how perfectly it punished her nosiness. She wanted to make assumptions about his private life? Fine. Here's an assumption she definitely didn't see coming. She wanted to comment on his purchases? Great. Here's a comment that'll make her think twice about ever doing that again. She wanted to turn a simple transaction into a personal conversation? Perfect. Here's a conversation she'll never forget. He doesn't say another word. He just grabs his bag and walks out, leaving behind a cashier who looks like she's seen a ghost and a line of customers who are probably still processing what they just witnessed. And here's the best part. He makes it all the way to the front door before he breaks character and starts laughing. All that frustration, all that anger, all that built-up tension from years of fertility struggles, and he just released it all in one perfectly timed, brutally sarcastic response. The drive home must have been incredible. He's probably replaying the whole thing in his head, thinking about the look on her face, the gasp from the woman behind him, the way the entire checkout area went silent. For years, he'd been dealing with the pain of fertility struggles, the pressure, the disappointment, the endless cycle of hope and heartbreak. And suddenly, he'd found a way to take all that frustration and turn it into something hilarious. He gets home, and his wife is waiting. They do what they came there to do, but then he tells her the story. And instead of being upset about his crude response, instead of being embarrassed about how he handled it, she laughs. They both laugh. Because sometimes, when you've been through hell, when you've dealt with years of the most personal, painful struggles, the best thing you can do is find a way to laugh about it. Think about what that cashier learned that day. She learned that not everyone wants to chat about their purchases. She learned that making assumptions about people's private lives can backfire spectacularly. She learned that sometimes, the person standing in front of you is dealing with things you can't even imagine, and maybe, just maybe, it's better to keep your comments to yourself. The genius of his response wasn't just in the shock value. It was in how perfectly it fit the crime. She was nosy, so he gave her more information than she ever wanted. She was making assumptions, so he fed her the most uncomfortable assumption possible. She was turning a private purchase into a public conversation, so he made it a conversation she'd never forget. And here's what makes this story even better. This happened right after his wife conceived their daughter. All those years of struggling, all those pregnancy tests, all those disappointments, and this was actually the time it worked. While he was standing in that checkout line, dealing with that nosy cashier, his wife was probably already pregnant with the daughter they'd been dreaming of for years. The universe had this incredible sense of timing, giving him his moment of perfect revenge right when his life was about to change forever. The woman behind him in line probably went home and told everyone she knew about the guy who destroyed a cashier with one sentence. The cashier probably went home and told her family about the customer who gave her the most uncomfortable moment of her retail career. And our guy? He went home and made a baby with his wife, all while having the best revenge story of his life. This isn't just about a rude comeback. This is about standing up for yourself when you've been pushed too far. This is about what happens when someone decides to make assumptions about your most private struggles. This is about finding a way to turn years of frustration into one perfect moment of justice. The beautiful thing is how natural it all was. He didn't plan this response. He didn't think about it beforehand. It just came out in that moment of pure frustration, and it was absolutely perfect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned or calculated. Sometimes it's just the right words at the right time, delivered with the perfect amount of sarcasm and attitude. Years later, when his daughter is actually a teenager, he'll probably think back to this moment and laugh all over again. He'll remember the day he invented a fictional teenage pregnancy crisis to shut down a nosy cashier, all while his real daughter was just a hope and a prayer. He'll remember how one moment of perfect sarcasm turned years of fertility struggles into the best revenge story he's ever experienced. That cashier learned something important that day. She learned that not everyone wants to share their joy with strangers. She learned that sometimes, what looks like a happy purchase might be connected to years of pain and struggle. She learned that maybe, just maybe, it's better to stick to, "Did you find everything okay?" instead of making assumptions about people's private lives. Look, I'm not saying you should go around making up stories about teenage pregnancies every time someone annoys you. But sometimes, when someone pushes you too far, when they refuse to take the hint, when they insist on making your private struggles into their entertainment, well, sometimes they get exactly what they deserve. And sometimes, that's exactly what they need to learn some basic human decency. This story gives me hope that there's still justice in the world. That sometimes, the universe lines up perfectly to give you exactly the right words at exactly the right time. That sometimes, all those years of frustration and pain can be transformed into one perfect moment of revenge that you'll laugh about for the rest of your life. If this story gave you that sweet satisfaction of perfect timing and brutal honesty, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the most savage comeback you've ever witnessed? And make sure to subscribe because trust me, we've got more stories coming that'll restore your faith in instant karma.